On Monday, November 1, the Boeing 757-200, operating as Donald Trump's private jet, took to the skies for the first time in several years. After becoming the 45th President of the United States, Trump was required to fly in a governmental aircraft, and in 2019, the 757 was parked in New York's Stewart International Airport. There, it was spotted with one engine removed, and requests for a single Rolls-Royce RB211 to fly one cycle were reported at the time. Now, an engine has seemingly been found, and the aircraft took off bound for Chenault International in Louisiana. The aircraft cruised at flight level 280, presumably to keep it outside RVSM airspace and the increased requirements associated with those operations. As it flew past Nashville, an unspecified emergency was declared and the aircraft turned back for a stop at Nashville International. After about an hour on the ground, the aircraft departed for Chenault. The aircraft will be on the ground there for an undetermined amount of time while the aircraft is serviced. Whether the aircraft will return to service operating for DJT operations or whether it will be sold is yet to be determined. On Sunday, October 31 through Tuesday, November 2, various world leaders and international delegations made their way to Scotland for the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, or COP26. The conference was held in Glasgow, with aircraft arriving with delegates aboard into Glasgow, Prestwick, and Edinburgh. Over 400 private jets arrived at Glasgow for the talks. This attracted criticism from some, pointing to the hypocrisy of arriving to a climate change conference on private jets, where scheduled public transport services were available. Event organisers, however, insist the talks will be carbon neutral. Alleged hypocrisy notwithstanding, we're currently watching some of those private aircraft crisscrossing European skies to shuttle leaders and delegates to and from the conference over a 2-day period. Among the many aircraft arriving and departing, here's a selection of some of the heavier aircraft to attend. Australia's delegation arrived in an RAAF Airbus KC-30A, also known as a multi-role tanker transport. This heavily modified A330 was delivered to Qantas as a passenger aircraft in 2008, and was converted to a military aircraft and delivered to the Royal Australian Air Force in 2019 to serve as a VIP transport aircraft. The Egyptian government operated their A340-200, which was delivered as a VIP transport aircraft in 1995. The Indian government operated their VIP Boeing 777-300ER, which was delivered from Air India in September 2020. The Japan Air Self-Defense Force operated 2 Boeing 777s into Glasgow, both in VIP configuration and delivered in 2018. The Turkish Air Force flew an Airbus A400 military transport, which they've operated since 2017, and the United Arab Emirates flew in on a Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner operated by Presidential Flight. Finally, of course, the President of the United States flew into Edinburgh on one of the US Air Force's Boeing VC-25As, known when the President is aboard as Air Force One. These VIP aircraft, based on the Boeing 747-200, have been operating since 1990 and are to be replaced by VC-25Bs, which will be based on the Boeing 747-8. With many around the world being put into storage when international travel took a nosedive in 2020, airlines are now starting to awaken their dormant Airbus A380s and preparing them to return to service. On Tuesday, November 2, a Qatar Airways A380 was moved from Doha International to the new Doha Hamad International, a distance of about 5 kilometers. Qatar Airways had not expected to return the A380 to service, with Group CEO Akbar al-Bakr stating in May 2021 that, in my opinion, looking back, it was the biggest mistake we did to purchase A380s. However, circumstances have changed, and this week he had this to say about the A380's return. The recent grounding of 19 Qatar Airways A350 fleet has left us with no alternative but to temporarily bring some of our A380 fleet back on key winter routes. This difficult decision reflects the gravity of the A350 issue and is intended to be a short-term measure to assist us in balancing our commercial needs, adding, "It does not signify a permanent reintroduction of our A380 fleet, which were grounded in favour of more fuel-efficient, twin-engine aircraft at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic." The A350 groundings followed Qatar Airways allegations that the fuselage surface below the paint on each of the jets was deteriorating, leading to a months-long public dispute with Airbus over the allegations. Qatar Airways insisted it would not take any A350 deliveries until the problem was resolved. Until then, the A380 will fill the gap. An hour later in London, a British Airways A380 took off for a short hop to Shannon in Ireland, where crews undertook recurrency training, including numerous takeoffs and landings. The aircraft had been stored in Madrid until late September, when it was ferried to London, and undertook a test flight in late October to prepare for its reintroduction to service. The A380 flew multiple takeoffs, approaches and landings at Shannon, and remained in the vicinity of County Clare. Most of the flights were short, lasting 15 to 20 minutes, and all remained below flight level 60. Shannon makes for an attractive aerodrome for such training flights, as RPT traffic is relatively low, and landing fees are much cheaper than at major airports. This stacks up when you want to land 6 or more times in a day. Once the training flights were completed, the aircraft returned to London, where it landed at about 3:15 PM local time. Sadly, this week has also seen multiple accidents and crashes around the world. On Tuesday, November 2, an Antonov AN-26, owned by Optimum Aviation and operated by Euro Airlines, departed Juba bound for Maban in South Sudan, with 5 crew and 28 drums of diesel on board. 3 minutes after departure, the crew declared an emergency, and the aircraft crashed soon after near the White Nile River. Emergency responders reported no survivors. The Director General for Juba International Airport said, "It is a technical problem actually, in which I cannot explain right now." However, Optimum Aviation stated that they were yet to establish facts as to why the plane crashed. On Wednesday, November 3, an Air Tindy de Havilland Canada DH-6C Twin Otter was flying from Yellowknife to Fort Simpson in Northwest Territories, Canada. With 3 passengers and 2 crew on board, the aircraft was about 40 minutes into the flight when the crew decided to divert to Fort Providence due to low fuel. The aircraft ran out of fuel and was forced to land about 8 nautical miles to the north of Fort Providence in swampland, remaining relatively intact. There were no reported injuries, and the cause of the fuel exhaustion is under investigation. Also on Wednesday, a Grodno Airlines Antonov AN-12, operating a flight from Yakutsk to Irkutsk in Russia, was approaching its destination. Carrying 9 people, the aircraft was reportedly returning to base after delivering food and consumer goods in the Chukotka Autonomous Region. At about 800 feet, the crew reported to air traffic control that they were going around. Shortly afterwards, radar contact was lost. The wreckage of the aircraft was found about 1.6 nautical miles east of the threshold of runway 30. None of the 7 crew members survived. Weather at the time of the accident was poor, with snowfall, low clouds, limited visibility, and an outside air temperature of about 7 degrees.